Hello and welcome to Cluster 7 Cloud Spreadsheet Manager, CSM. As you can see here, we have our home page showing our two capabilities, our compare activity and indeed risk checks as well. We're going to look at the first of those here, and indeed we're going to go to the risk checks home page. On this home page, as you can see, we are able to look at various risk checks that we have applied by using various profiles. Those profiles we can go into more detail in a full demo. To run a risk check, it's quite straightforward. We click on this option here, drag and drop the files that we wish to add. So simply I go to either my network share and here on my C drive in this instance, click on the file and add this to this. I can choose a profile. In this case, Poor Spreadsheet Practice is my profile, and I save that here. This process is actually looking at each of the cells within that workbook and assessing them against various rules that we have defined within the profile to see if those rules have been broken in any way and therefore assign some level of risk associated with that. As you can see on this demo, I've actually run this slightly earlier, and we can see that there are some macro rules broken, some links, some worksheet rules, no name ranges or workbook rules, but also some cell rules broken as well. If I want to look at that in detail, I can do it one of two ways. One way is actually to drill down from here. The second is actually to download the spreadsheet itself. And here's one that I have prepared earlier that covers this piece. On this sheet, you can see that the rules that have been broken and how they are listed and their degree of severity. I also have a detailed cell breakdown of how each of the cells on each of the worksheets have been viewed. So whether they simply have values, formulas, errors or constants, and indeed across the whole cell count. If I want to use the rules here to drill down, I simply can look at, for example, the cell rules summary. I can see as an instance here that on the statement final I've got a number of issues. I can drill to that, and if I actually then click right through to this area here, it will take me to the area of the workbook where clearly as we see up in the top left here, that somebody has added plus 1,000 to that. We call that a magic number, where somebody has done some rounding there, which may not be obvious to the user of the workbook. As you can see, a very simple, quick and efficient way of reviewing a whole workbook in a couple of minutes. Let us return back to CSM itself, and we're going to go to the second of those capabilities, the comparisons. As you can see, we have various containers down here comparing various aspects of the comparison, and we're going to work on the sales consolidation process sitting below. This compare process compares two workbooks, so January to February, February to March, and so on. Think of that as track changes, but with the results provided as a dashboard rather than as a red line. The dashboard is initially saying to us that between March and April, there was a macro change, a worksheet change, and a cell change, while all the areas in gray, such as VBA, have no changes at all. Let's go and look at that in more detail. Here we can see that there have been indeed a macro change, 4 worksheet changes, and indeed significant changes within each of the worksheets as well. Let's start with the macros. On the left-hand side, we have the macro as it was in the prior version, and you'll see that there's been a deletion of this number here, the 1 of 11. On the right-hand side is the dashboard that is now in the new version, i.e. in April, as defined in this area up above. And we'll see that the 11 has now been changed to 12, and indeed more lines of macro code have been inserted as well. That same process can also be applied to worksheets. So let's go look at those worksheets. We see here that we've got 4 worksheets added. Very useful to know. An alternative way of looking at that same information is by looking at that graphically. So as you can see from this particular look here, we can see that in Europe 4 workbooks have been added, all in green: Germany, Spain, France and Poland. And if I again look at this piece at the top here, I can see how that workbook looked in March, and stepping back further, how that workbook was indeed in February. And so we can use this as a timeline or time manager to actually help you step through the changes of that workbook very effectively. And indeed, I can do that with all functions within this summary line sitting across here. Let's have a look at maybe the cell changes for North America. So now we're looking at a cell-by-cell revision of that worksheet. This left-hand area here is actually my mini-map. The mini-map renders the worksheet as many rows and columns as required onto this image here. The image shows the areas that have been reviewed, which is those in the light color, and the areas that have changed in the dark color. On the right-hand side is a very handy filter. So if I wanted to look at simply the rows that have been deleted, the clever algorithm that's behind CSM automatically detects which rows have been deleted. If I wanted to just look at the fields that have been recalculated, it will then list those out on this particular view as well. So very quickly, by using the clever algorithm associated with the product, I'm actually pulling together information that enables me to do a very quick and effective review of all the changes within this worksheet. As you can see here, I can add comments to each of these cells, and if I want to drill down further on that particular cell, I actually then can be taken to the original workbook and the latest version of the workbook to see how that cell has changed, and the product automatically relocates me to there. A summary of all those comments and changes are made within this review section here, and I can actually look at whether I'm looking at the reviews and what summary I've got, and I can apply filters to that as I wish. Once I've completed a review, I can mark a commentary on that and actually hand it off to approval if required. This is ideal for doing internal reviews between internal teams, or indeed using it externally with clients as well. Circling all the way back to the home page, we'll see here that I'm able to apply dashboards and filters of comparisons and my risk checks, and be able to drill down into each of those areas to look at the status of my work and those of the teams that I'm able to view. Thank you very much for listening today. This has been a very short overview of CSM, Cloud Spreadsheet Manager from Cluster 7.